What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. We are recording this on Thursday, July 27th. My name is Eric. That's my co-host, Will. How you feeling this morning, man?
Hey man, I'm feeling good. You guys mind any of the stuff going on in the background, man? There might be some stuff happening in the background. Don't look back there. Just focus on the football, man. We're having fun. Hopefully that window's too small anyways, but hey, we're having fun out here.
We keep it rolling no matter what's going on. But yeah, we got a fun one for you guys today. We're revisiting our redraft rankings. We're going top 24 wide receiver rankings for 2023, and we're making it into a tier list. So we're less focused on the individual rankings of these guys, although that is important, and we'll get into that. More so trying to fit these guys into tiers and, fitting the slots that they should be drafted in your upcoming drafts. Now that we're getting pretty close to August, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we're really getting close. We actually have some metrics now. We're starting to see how these teams are shaking out, so we can actually really give some analysis for redraft. So I'm actually really excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quickly before we get into it, like I said, since we're not getting super into the weeds as far as individual rankings, if you guys do have questions about that specifically, player versus player, who should I draft? Go ahead and leave a comment down below. We answer all of them. We love to engage with you guys. We can help you out down there. And if you're looking for really in-depth answers and want to have a real conversation, there's a link to our Discord in the description below as well. So go check that out, join the community, and we can chop it up. So with that being said, let's get right into it. We got the S tier with some pretty obvious names that I think we'll probably agree on, starting with Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree there.
Yeah, so there's not even really much discussion that needs to be had. He's the wide receiver one. He was last year, so we'll keep it rolling. Who's your wide receiver two?
Wide receiver 2, sticking with the LSU boys for this one too. I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase, even though I feel like there is someone else that could be in this spot as well. Did I just fuck something up? I definitely did. What the fuck just happened? Oh my god, bro. There's no way. There's no way. This whole thing just closed on me just now. I lost the tier list, all of that. Hold on. It's a morning.
Boy.
Oh my god. Oh my god. All right, we're back. Okay. Sorry, I got that.
Huh? You don't have to say sorry to me. I'm chilling. This is fine. I'm worried about your well-being.
My mental is all over the place right now. But sorry about that, guys. Next guy up is Ja'Marr Chase for me. I feel like there is someone else who could be in this spot as well, but I like Ja'Marr Chase for it. I like the role that he has in that offense. Obviously, him and Joe Burrow, a lot of chemistry there. But he's just been used more so than his rookie year. He was more of a splash play, big play, playmaker. Now he's more of an all-of-the-field wide receiver, so he's getting that volume too. So it's awesome to see that he's really getting that opportunity. So I like Ja'Marr Chase right there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really close between him and Cooper Kupp,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm assuming was the guy that you were referring to. Right now, I have Cooper Kupp as my wide receiver too, but I don't mind it either way. Like I said, we're not getting too into the weeds on individual rankings, and they're well within the same tier. So I'm fine with having Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver 3 here.
I absolutely agree, and this is where the tier breaks for me. I don't know if it breaks for you as well here, or I know you like to throw Tyreek into this tier as well.
I do. So you said we did discuss not our actual players who's where, but I said prior to the video I have 4 tiers. You have 5. I actually have 5 players in here. But I had an asterisk next to the 5th one. But we'll discuss. So I definitely have Tyreek in here. I'm very high on him this year.
Mm-hmm.
He was pushing for the league lead in receiving yards last year, and that was, with Tua in and out a bunch of times, having Skylar Thompson throwing to him, a whole, smorgasbord of quarterbacks back there. I fully expect him to take off this year, so I definitely have him in this top tier. I also have Stephon Diggs here.
Okay. No, I'm with that. I think we've had this conversation before in a video where we had these two ranked pretty closely. So I do agree with that. I'm not mad at that at all.
He's the guy that I had an asterisk next to, where I don't know that he like. I feel like Tyreek Hill is kind of the tier break, and Stephon Diggs might belong in a tier of his own. But for the sake of the video, we're not going to designate a whole tier just for one player. And I think Diggs belongs closer to this top tier than to the tier below him.
No, I absolutely agree, because if this tier does break here, the next person that I would have next is Devontae Adams. And
Yeah.
based on talent and stuff like that, Devontae Adams would be in that top tier, but just based on, I guess, the quarterback situation with having to switch to Jimmy Garoppolo. And, Stephon Diggs has Josh Allen there, and that situation hasn't changed. So it does make sense for Stephon Diggs to be above Devontae Adams in that. So I like the logic there. That makes sense.
My cat is getting in the way of things, but it's all good. Okay, so tier of 5 at the top, we agree there. And you said Devontae Adams would be your wide receiver 6 in the A tier.
Mm-hmm. That would be my next wide receiver in that tier. I'm okay with moving him around in those rankings because I know that you probably do have him ranked a little bit lower because of the situation with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not as pessimistic about that situation just because Devontae Adams last year, a lot of his production came off of those deep targets, which meant that his catch rate success actually came down, but the value of those catches went up. But I feel like this year with having Jimmy Garoppolo, and one of his strengths are throwing in that, intermediate part of the field, short range of the field. I think we see Devontae Adams' catch rate come back up, but maybe those big plays come down. But I think that does still level out in a way. That's at least my logic behind it.
Yes, I completely agree with your logic and like why you have Devontae Adams there. I actually used a lot of the same metrics that you referenced to kind of give him like a mini projection. I went through like air yards per attempt for both Jimmy G and Derek Carr. I went through true completion percentage because, like you mentioned, Jimmy G higher completion percentage, air yards favor Derek Carr, and kind of went through how that would affect total receptions, yardage, touchdown rate, and stuff like that. And based on what I calculated, it would have put him around wide receiver 7 last year. And so that's about where I have him this year. I think I have him as my wide receiver 8 currently in the rankings. But again, most of these guys are interchangeable in the second tier for me.
I got you. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I'm cool with Devontae Adams there. My number 6 personally was CeeDee Lamb. I do expect Dak Prescott to come back fully healthy. I expect him to be closer to what we've seen from him throughout his career rather than a fairly disappointing season last season. Obviously, he was also coming back from injury and stuff like that. But yeah, I think CD is going to have a pretty good year this year.
No, I agree with that. And just right behind him in that same tier, I've got A.J. Brown in this tier. Me personally. You do as well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's just hard to not put him in this tier. Last year, he was a wide receiver 6 in overall scoring, wide receiver 8 in per game output. Just his first season with the Eagles. Usually, like, receivers struggle in their first season with the team, but he obviously did not at all. He clicked in immediately. He had a career high in targets, set a career mark in receptions and yardage, and his best season and matched his best seasons with 11 touchdowns, and that's just in his first year. So, kind of expecting that to get better, but it's clear, obvious that everything's kind of flowing through him in terms of the receiving game. Even with Devonta Smith there, even with Dallas Goedert, he is the alpha on this team. So I like A.J. Brown in this range as well.
Yep, completely agree with all of your reasoning there. Next guy I have up here is the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I saw a stat, and I knew that the number was high. I didn't realize how high it was. Amon-Ra St. Brown was tackled at the 1 yard line 7 times last year. 7 times.
Yeah.
How did Jamal Williams score 15 touchdowns or whatever he scored? Because Amon-Ra kept getting tackled at the 1 yard line. And Jameson Williams suspended for the first 6 games. Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs are both rookies. I do expect them to be involved, but those are the next 2 best options in the receiving game, I think, for the Lions. This is going to be a high-paced team, a high-volume passing offense, I would assume. And so I think we're going to see a ton of usage from Amon-Ra, especially early. And he's too good not to continue to use him throughout the season. So I have him locked in firmly into tier 2.
No, I absolutely agree. In terms of target share, stuff like that, there's not too many people who are matching Amon-Ra at all. Like, there's people like Tyreek Hill, stuff like that. He was second only behind, I think, Tyreek Hill in target per route run, I believe. So Amon-Ra definitely up there. In terms of the tier, do you have anyone else in this tier, or do you have a break at this point as well?
I do have one more.
Okay. Let's see.
Does it break for you?
A little, but I'm interested to see who you
A
got here
little.
because I could be convinced.
I threw Garrett Wilson up here as well.
I was thinking it. I was
Yeah.
wondering. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that move. You're braver than I am, but I like it.
Okay. So, well, let's talk this through. Do you want, for me, like similar to Stephon Diggs, I could see the argument where maybe he doesn't belong in this tier, but I think he's probably pretty significantly better than the guys in the tier below. Maybe that's just me.
No,
What
no.
are your thoughts on that?
So my thing is, I like him, especially in comparison to like Amon Ra. I feel like if we have him up there, Garrett Wilson should probably also be in that tier too, which is why I'm not mad at him being up there at all. That's why I was saying like I have 5, but I can be convinced to move things up because Garrett Wilson last year was able to succeed where in a situation where it wasn't very good for him. I think
Yeah.
there was something crazy like 16% of his targets were just inaccurate by the quarterback. They were just not going to ever be catched, and that was like 4th amongst wide receivers in the league. So
It was bad.
yeah, that's like pretty high. And then 18% of his 51 targets from Zach Wilson were deemed uncatchable. While he saw another 50 targets from Joe Flacco, 41 from Mike White, 5 from Chris Streveler. It's yeah, like you just see he listened to that cast of people throwing him the ball, and he was able to find an offensive rookie of the year out of that. Able to get over 1,000 yards receiving, and all we've seen in training camp so far is that he's only getting better, and he's starting to link up with Aaron Rodgers a lot too. So I'm really cool with him being up there. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm fine with that 100%.
I dig it. Yeah, we saw the flashes last year. He had some big games, 26 points, 15, 15, 24, 20. Like he had the spike weeks. We know he has it in him. He's coming into his sophomore year, which is where you see, the second year leap from wide receivers is typically one that you see pay off really well in fantasy. And so, yeah, I'm projecting the same thing here for Garrett Wilson.
I like that.
So we got Garrett Wilson up there. That definitely ends the tier for me.
Yeah.
Who would lead off the B tier for you?
Leading off the B tier for me is Jalen Waddle. Personally, yeah. Okay, bet. So, Jalen Waddle, I have him here just because. Well, hold on. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I gotta find my notes real quick.
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. We good? We good.
Yes, sir.
So, rookie year, Jalen Waddle, we kind of saw him as sort of I guess more of a volume target than anything. We saw how he could link up with Tua, stuff like that. But we knew going into next year with Tyreek Hill coming to the team that was not going to be the case. And with that being said, Miami and Mike McDaniel was able to redeploy Jalen Waddle in just different ways, but was able to kind of show more of the talents that he has, show off more of that high-end speed that he has, show off that ability for him to make things happen more in that intermediate part of the field as well, and his ability to work out of the slot too. So I did like Jalen Waddle up here in this spot, and I just feel like his downfield opportunities also just increased by quite a bit since that rookie year. Like his rookie year was raising his yards per catch from 9.8 up to 18.1 last year. So that is just a super drastic change in usage, but I like that usage for Jalen Waddle. I feel like it fits his talents more, and I feel like it's just going to it's going to be between him and Tyreek Hill in terms of this receiving team because there's no one else really to throw the ball to besides maybe the running backs. Outside of that, there's no real wide receiver competition. Who knows who their tight end? Durham Smythe? Is that
Durham
it?
Smythe is
Yeah.
currently their starting tight end, yeah.
So between the two of them, they're both probably going to have somewhere around 25-30% target shares. Well, Tyreek obviously is going to have 30% at least, but I see that also being the case for Waddle. And honestly, I just see the team just being able to deploy him in some creative ways and just keep that ball rolling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really high on Miami, like just as a team in general this year. I expect them to do big things. As long as Tua stays healthy, I fully expect both of these guys to have huge years. You mentioned the deep ball opportunities. Tua, when he was healthy, was one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. And so that's going to mean big things for Jalen Waddle. Next on the list for me would be T. Higgins.
I like it.
We've talked about him kind of on both ends of the spectrum on the channel so far. I didn't realize, I don't know how long ago it was, a little over a month ago or whatever, that we last did this video, where I had put T. Higgins, I think, in a tier below this. I didn't realize how many games he left early last year. It was like 4 separate times that he left early due to injury, which obviously decreased his total points, but severely decreased his points per game as well. And I believe he still finished. Where is he? He still finished as the wide receiver 19, even with all that being said, at 11.5 points per game. If we don't see that continue into this year, I fully expect him to bounce back. He's got the chemistry with Joe Burrow, another team that I have high expectations for offensively. So yeah, I could see an increase in touchdown rate, an increase in volume, and if he can stay healthy, then you're just going to see all that accumulate into a really high-end wide receiver season.
No, I 100% agree. It was one of those guys that, especially before last year, looking at the metrics between him and Jamar Chase, they were extremely similar. Obviously, Jamar kind of separated himself a little bit more last year, but in terms of usage and in terms of volume, stuff didn't really change all too much for T. Higgins. It was just his role in the offense changed, and he was able to make that still work. So I absolutely love T. Higgins up here, high-powered offense. I think he's a great pick.
Yeah.
And for my next one, I have Chris Olave also in this tier, obviously, next to him. I just feel like he was really good in his rookie season, caught 72 catches off of 119 targets for over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns, and expecting that to go up with an increase, just with better quarterback play and Derek Carr, someone who's able to air out the ball a little bit more accurate down the field as well than someone like an Andy Dalton that he had last year at quarterback, or even, one of my favorites, but, Jameis Winston obviously was not getting the job done out there. So having Derek Carr should be a noticeable upgrade over the two of them. And just fleshing out his sample, just looking at his rookie wideouts that were able to play as much as he did, his 2.4 yards per route run were only bested in terms of other rookie wide receivers by Odell Beckham Jr., A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. So with that being said, that's a great company to be in, and he's right up there with them. So I do like Chris Olave, and I'm more optimistic going forward this year.
Okay. I also like Chris Olave. I do have him in this tier, but I have him significantly lower. Okay. I have him currently as my wide receiver 17. I think I'm probably pretty far off of market on that. So I'm more than okay with, conceding individual rankings there. He's still in the tier, so not a big difference for me. I don't know that the quote-unquote quarterback upgrade is going to be as significant as some people think it is. Like, I think Derek Carr probably suits him better for his downfield abilities, which is going to be important. And I do think he's going to get more volume this year, just based on the fact that he was a rookie last year. He's going to continue to grow and get better and have more trust from the coaching staff, have more stuff drawn up for him. So I fully expect him to improve. But Andy Dalton actually had like a pretty good year last year by the metrics. He performed well when he played. And Derek Carr, it wasn't that great last year. So I don't know that there's going to be a huge difference there.
I will say too, like I said, it's kind of like with Devontae Adams, where there is a trade-off in having someone like Derek Carr at quarterback versus an Andy Dalton. Right. But I do also think that I looked it up, and I was looking at like projected passing defenses and stuff like that, projected passing schedules. And I think the Saints have the second easiest in the NFL as well.
Okay.
So it is a little bit more quarterback friendly in terms of schedule. So I am looking forward to that as well as a metric. Okay. I did forget to mention that.
Yeah, that's not something that I had looked into, so that makes a lot more sense. And like I said, we're not even that far off. He's still in the same tier. I'm also Chris Olave, just maybe not quite as high as the current market.
That's fair.
Next guy I have on here, kind of the opposite situation. I'm probably a lot higher on him than the market would have him. I have Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 13.
I love it.
Yeah. I don't want to read too much into the training camp hype, which we'll talk about. I think we got another video coming out soon talking about all the latest training camp updates, but he's been getting rave reviews, like from there's not a single person that's had a bad thing to say about Calvin Ridley. We just saw that video come out with him and Zay Jones running a dig route, and he ran it like at 3 times the speed that Zay Jones did. So fluid, so smooth. I don't want people to forget how talented this guy was. He was the wide receiver 4 back in 2020, 2019. I forget which year it was. I think it was 2020.
Yeah, it was 2020. Yeah.
As the wide receiver 2, technically on his own team to Julio Jones, he still finished as the fantasy overall wide receiver He's a route technician. He's got blazing speed. He's really good in the red zone. He's a fantastic separator. And now he gets to come into this ascending offense in Jacksonville with an ascending quarterback in Trevor Lawrence that's getting a ton of hype. So yeah, I think we're culminating into something better than what people are expecting right now.
Yeah, it was that video, just to talk about it one more time before we move on. It was like the example of like people said like a Chrysler 300 looks like a Bentley until a Bentley pulls up. That's exactly what that video is. Because you watch Zay Jones, and there's nothing wrong with Zay Jones's route, but just the way Calvin Ridley ran it is crazy. It's crazy. Poetry in motion.
Chef's kiss.
Absolutely.
Too good.
And
yeah, on to your, what would this be, wide receiver 15 at this point? Yeah.
Yes, my wide receiver 15 right here is going to be Mr. Devonta Smith. Mr. Devonta Smith. Can't leave Smitty out. Smitty's at least B tier. So just building on his positive rookie season that he already had in 2021, he turned 64 catches, came back last year with 95 catches, so obviously taking an uptick there. Through week 9, he was the wide receiver 30 in overall scoring, wide receiver 33. But from week 10 to the close of the season, he was the wide receiver 5 overall and the wide receiver 6 in expected points. So obviously things changed when Dallas Goedert got hurt. That was a big factor in Smitty getting more volume, but the fact that Dallas Goedert came back and then things did not change for Smitty kind of shows that I think he earned that role, and they should be moving forward with him using that as well. Smith also, from week 9 through the Super Bowl, out-targeted A.J. Brown as well on the team. I don't know if people really know that, but he actually got more targets. I think caught 10 more passes as well. However, Brown had to have more receiving yards, stuff like that, and one more touchdown. But I digress. Yeah. The volume was there for Smitty. I don't think things are an argument of volume for Smitty in this offense, even though people are expecting to be, run heavy, stuff like that. We were expecting to be super run heavy last year. But obviously they were able to sustain 2 high-end wide receivers, and a pretty high-end tight end as well. So I do expect, more things going forward. I expect this offense to be more explosive and just Devonta Smith to have even more of a role here too.
I like it. Yeah, I agree with basically everything you said. I don't know that I'm projecting this offense to take another step. I think they might be the same as last year. But even if that's the case, like you mentioned, he finished that stretch run of the season as the wide receiver 5 or 6 or so throughout that time. So, yeah, I have no problem having him well within this third tier. I still have a couple more names in here. Do you have some more in here as well?
I do have a couple.
Okay. All right. Keenan Allen is my next on the list. A little bit older. Obviously, he started the season slow with injuries. But I think, 1, if he stays healthy, that's going to be key. But 2, I think that this Chargers offense is just going to be fantastic this year. Kellen Moore comes in as the new offensive coordinator. I think people are projecting that to mean even more pass attempts. I don't know how much more pass heavy you can get than what we saw out of them last year, but I don't necessarily need it to mean more pass attempts. I just want it to be more efficient, and I want there to be more deep balls, and I fully expect that under Kellen Moore. I think it'll be actually slightly more balanced. We're going to see a little bit more rush attempts, a little bit more play action, and it's going to make those deep balls that Justin Herbert excels at even more effective. And then you talk about stretching the field, opening up the field. Then Keenan Allen is just going to be, the route running technician and separator in that short to intermediate area that we've seen from him throughout his career. And yeah, it's going to be a really explosive offense, and I expect Keenan Allen to be a huge beneficiary of that.
Yeah, I think it's literally just been proven at this point in his career. If Keenan Allen is healthy and he's out there on the field, the ball is going to come his way at least 30% of the time. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I like that. I like that pick, especially for redraft. I think, and then taking a look, I don't know. Okay, I'm interested to see actually who you have left in this tier, because I have someone left. I'm not really sure if they belong in this tier, but we can talk about it. But I'm interested to see who it is that you have left in this tier too.
You want me to say it first, or do you want to go first?
I kind of want you to go first, and then I'll say mine, because mine is more likely to be in the next tier, but there's an argument, I feel like. But who do you have?
Amari Cooper.
That was who I had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he belongs here.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I don't know. I feel like Amari Cooper's going to end up having a career year this year, to be honest with you. I really do. Obviously, he's got Deshaun Watson at quarterback. One of the best, if not the best quarterback he's had in his whole career. Some people would argue Dak. I don't. I've said that before in videos. I feel like Deshaun Watson, last year they just kind of throw him onto the field and told him, figure it out. You're an NFL quarterback. And that's not always going to work, especially when you're with a new team and a new system. But now that he's kind of had some time under his belt, he's got a full offseason. He's got a training camp to go through now. It's going to be a different story this year, and that's going to benefit Amari Cooper greatly, someone who already was benefited last year just by, just being in a new environment. Jacoby Brissett he found a lot of success with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, still was finding success with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. And sure, he's dealing with some hamstring stuff right now in training camp, blah, blah, blah. But that's something Amari Cooper's kind of always dealing with, is some sort of injury. It doesn't really matter.
It's true.
So if he's able to just keep up that strong campaign that he had last year with overall better quarterback play, I don't see him not getting better, to be honest with you, or just finding success in that. Even if he doesn't get better, he's still going to find a lot of success in this offense.
Yeah. So I like the guys that we have ranked ahead of Amari Cooper, and I wouldn't change it. But based on the way that last year finished, where he was the wide receiver 15 in points per game at 12.2, if you project any sort of increase in quarterback play from Deshaun Watson or efficiency from this offense in general, he's going to finish higher, and we're too low on him at this point.
Honestly, I think that Amari Cooper does have, we have him ranked right now, wide receiver 18, something crazy, but he has top 10.
17 or 18, yeah.
He has top 10 potential, honestly.
It's well within his range of outcomes. I'm not... clearly, based on where we have him right now, we're not predicting that, but yes, I agree. He's got that in his bag potentially this year.
Absolutely.
But that does round out the tier for me.
Yes, that's going to round off the tier for me as well. And then I guess it's your pick now, since we kind of agreed on that one right there.
I'll let you kick us off because I feel like I said Keenan and Amari.
That's fine, because I'm going to go with Mr. DK Metcalf right here.
Okay.
Dacarius.
Okay.
That's his name, right? Dacarius Metcalf?
I think it might be.
Or DeKalen?
Sure,
DeKalen?
Right.
One of those two.
DeKalen. I think
it's DeKalen.
Yeah.
But, but in terms of DK Metcalf, last year he set a career high in targets and catches last season with 141 and 90 respectively. And he was used as more of a total receiver last year than as a vertical playmaker. Obviously, he didn't have the benefit of having a Russell Wilson, one of the best deep field, ball throwers out there. The quarterback had Geno Smith, so he had to be retooled, obviously, because Geno Smith isn't the same quarterback as Russell Wilson. So in one way, I feel like DK Metcalf got exposed a little bit because he did have to play a little bit more as a complete wide receiver and not just that vertical threat, because as a vertical threat, he's probably going to win 9 times out of 10 on those battles because of just physicality and just who he is as a player. But having to round out his game a little bit more. We saw him struggle a little bit. His yards after the catch took a hit. And, even though he got more friendly targets thrown his way, it's just, I don't know. I like him in this spot. I feel like DK Metcalf isn't a super elite wide receiver, but I do feel like, in the offense that he's in, he commands the target share that he does. It's a successful, high-powered offense. He's going to find some success, and the field should open up a little bit more now that they have a Jackson Smith-Njigba out there on the field. But I don't know, man. Am I talking myself out of DK Metcalf being in this tier?
You should.
I think I am. I think I'm moving DK Metcalf down a tier.
I don't even think you need to move him out of the tier, but this is what, wide receiver 18 at this point?
Yeah, he's got to move back quite a bit, I feel like.
I have him in the tier, but at the bottom at wide receiver 24.
Okay, well, let's move him down for now.
I'm a bit of a DK hater.
Okay.
He finished as the wide receiver 27 in points per game last year at only 10.7 points per game. You make a good point that he was used maybe not to his strength last year. He was forced to be like that complete receiver possession guy as opposed to more of the deep threat that we saw him have success with earlier in his career. I think he does get to revert back to that with Jackson Smith-Njigba now in town.
But how much success is there to be found in that role in that offense now? I think that's where I was getting at. I feel like he's going to revert back to more of that player that he was. So in that aspect, his game should get better because he's playing more to his strengths. But how valuable is that strength on this team? That's the issue.
Well, I think it's going to be very valuable to them as an NFL team, but for fantasy, like
Right.
I think we're talking about a huge decrease in targets. You mentioned that he had a career high at 141 targets last year. I think that's probably going to come down by like 40, like it's going to be near 100. Jackson Smith and Jigba might be the best wide receiver on this team immediately. He's going to command a lot of volume. Tyler Lockett outperformed DK Metcalf even last year. I think he's probably going to be the one that's hurt the most by Jackson Smith and Jigba, just because their roles are fairly similar. But yeah, I think the volume's going to be too low for DK to really be more than a low end wide receiver 2 this year.
Yeah, you guys heard it here first, folks. I literally talked myself through that, and I just moved him down. It's crazy because I really do want to like DK Metcalf, but every time I
Yeah.
start talking about him, I just talk myself out of it every time.
Yeah. He's exciting, but it's tough to make a compelling argument fantasy wise for this year at least.
Yeah. Damn. Sorry, DK. I'm not sorry.
But to be fair, there's a lot of question marks surrounding most of the guys in this tier for me, so they could be interchangeable. That's why we're down in the C tier at this point. Yeah, the C tier. But for me, the C tier is led off by Jerry Jeudy.
Okay.
He finished last season really, really hot. I want to say I can't remember the exact number. I apologize for that. But I want to say he was like a top 5 wide receiver for the last 7 weeks of the season. And even if you go by his full season numbers on a points per game basis, he still finished well ahead of DK Metcalf and other guys that we have in this tier at wide receiver 20 at 11.4 points per game. Sean Payton comes into this Denver team, and I expect, I'm not going to say that they're going to be what we hoped they would be coming into last year because we had really high expectations. But I certainly expect them to be running much smoother than they did last year with Nathaniel Hackett. And so I think Russ is going to show some improvement. I think Jerry Jeudy has established himself as the wide receiver 1. They bring in a lot of other receiving options as well. So there's going to be some mouths to feed. It's not going to be all Jerry Jeudy, but that's why I have him this low. Because if he performs anywhere near what he did the stretch run, he's going to be a lot higher than this.
Yeah, because that stretch run, like you said, those 5 weeks, that last 5 weeks was absolutely insane out of Jerry Jeudy. And if he keeps that rolling forward and keeps that volume rolling forward, he's going to be a monster this year. He's got the talent to do it as well. I've kind of always believed in Jerry Jeudy since he got drafted. I'm glad he's finally starting to step out some.
I was kind of a Jerry Jeudy hater immediately out of college. I don't know why at this point. It's been a little while, but I'm coming back around. We're going full circle. I'm in on Jerry Jeudy.
Yes, let's go. Let's go. Oh, do I do it, bro? Because I kind of want to do it, but people might get mad at me.
Who's going to get mad at you? Who
Oh,
cares?
yeah, you're right. I want to put Brandon Ayuk in this tier.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm putting Brandon
Yeah.
Ayuk in this tier.
Yes.
I feel like he is the best wide receiver on this team in terms of being a wide receiver.
Yes.
Maybe not the best football player on the team, but he is the best wide receiver on this team.
Yes.
Early on, set career highs in targets, 114, 78 catches, 1,015 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And he's just looking like a massive value right now. Right now, people are, I believe, overvaluing the hell out of Deebo Samuel. I think they're still hoping that he's going to be that 2021 Deebo Samuel, and he's just not. Meanwhile, you got Brandon Ayuk, who's going way later in drafts, who I feel like is going to find a lot more success out there on the football field.
Completely agree. I have one player ahead of him, but I'm not even like super confident. I have Brandon Ayuk as my wide receiver 20 in this tier as well. You bring up a lot of good points. We've seen now that Christian McCaffrey has come to the 49ers, Deebo's role be reduced dramatically. There's been off-season hype about Deebo. They're saying he's sending pictures of himself to Kyle Shanahan, saying he's in the best shape of his life and looking great. Everybody's in the best shape of their life at this point in the off-season. Training camp is when you hear that the most. It doesn't matter. And we fully acknowledge Deebo is an amazing football player. But we're talking fantasy football and the production that he's going to see for this team. And yeah, I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. Brandon Ayuk is the wide receiver 1 there, and he's going to produce like it in 2023.
Hell yeah.
But the guy that I had just ahead of him, and again, not super confident in it, Terry McLaurin. Obviously, we're Commanders fans, and honestly, that makes me kind of devalue Washington's players most of the time, just because I know how
Yeah.
bad we are as a franchise and the heartbreak that we've gone through our entire lives. But it's hard for me to rank him much lower than this. He was the wide receiver 22 in points per game last year, with a multitude of quarterbacks back there. We get probably Sam Howell, maybe some Jacoby Brissett this year. Um, I don't know. I think Jahan Dotson had a good year last year and is gonna push for some target share. Curtis Samuel's always good when he's healthy, but when he's healthy is the real question mark.
Yeah.
But Terry's the best on the team, and year after year he's kind of been this middling to back end wide receiver two. I don't have any reason to believe that that's going to change.
No, I 100% agree with that. I like that a lot. I do like that a lot.
All right, cool.
Now, this one right here, I think I'm going to get some pushback from you on this one.
Let's see it.
Possibly.
Let's hear it.
But I've got Mr. Deontay Johnson up here.
Oh, okay.
I feel like at this point in the draft, if you're getting him at the wide receiver 22, I feel like that's going to be a massive, massive value. He's one of the more interesting wide receiver one options in the NFL right now, and we can talk about it because last year I don't think he made it into the end zone once. I don't think he scored a single touchdown.
Goose
but
zero
he's
times.
right, but he's still ranked first amongst all wide receivers in terms of the ability to get open from ESPN. I don't know. That's a real metric they have apparently.
The open score.
Yeah.
I buy into it a little bit. There's some skepticism, but no, I think it's worthy of being brought up in this scenario.
It's enough to say that he's at least running routes out there and he's getting open.
He's playing football, guys.
The biggest question is the question that I know you're going to raise, and it's, do you think he's going to succeed with Kenny Pickett at quarterback? I feel like at a certain point, if you're throwing him the ball as many times as they are throwing him the ball, at some point, him being the player that he is going to find some success. Just since entering the league in 2019, only 7 wide receivers have had more receptions than Deontay Johnson. And out of the 96 wide receivers to catch 100 or more passes over that span of time, Deontay Johnson ranks 81st in yards per reception. So there's a lot of a mixed bag in there because he gets a lot of volume, but what is he turning it into? But I feel like that volume is just going to really, at this point in the draft, you're getting him at the wide receiver 22, and he's getting 30% target share. If you're not drafting a guy like that, it's just because you're hating on Kenny Pickett. And at that point, we don't really know what Kenny Pickett's going to do this year, but what we do know is Deontay Johnson commands volume in this offense no matter who's throwing the ball. So that's somebody I'm willing to at least take a shot on.
Yeah. I like that. I like the argument. I love him as a player.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's well worthy of being in this conversation just as a talent, as a target earner and as a separator. You mentioned I'm definitely low on Kenny Pickett, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. But I do expect that offense to take a step up from last year. Kenny Pickett, with a full year under his belt, he gets to start the season as a starter. We don't have the back and forth with Mitchell Trubisky like we did last year. Much improved offensive line. We're talking, near bottom of the NFL offensive line group last year that I think is now being ranked by most of the metrics that I've seen somewhere near the middle, between like 15 and 18. So probably the best offensive line they've had at least past 3 or 4 years. So I can see it. I don't personally have him in here, but I think maybe I could be overlooking him a little bit. So I'm willing to have him in there, and we can kind of talk about the other guys in the tier, and we'll see how it shakes out.
Okay.
For me, the next guy on my list was Christian Kirk.
Okay.
Wide receiver 2 now in Jacksonville, but he had a really, really good year last year. He was our boy, somebody that we were hyping up tremendously last year. Pretty happy with how that turned out. Finished as the wide receiver 18 in points per game at 11.8. And I think you're going to see the chemistry between him and Trevor Lawrence grow into this season. He had a team lead 133 targets, 84 receptions. With Calvin Ridley coming in and him probably taking the back seat, I do see those numbers maybe not coming down, but certainly not increasing. But I think we could see a slight increase in efficiency just because he's not going to be the focal point of the offense. Defenses are going to have to worry about Calvin Ridley. He's also probably going to get to do a lot more running out of the slot, which is where I think he's best suited. And so it's going to be a lot easier for him to get open. He's got the two-way go out of the slot. So I just expect big things for him this year. And for that offense in general, I think things are trending up for Jacksonville.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think, like you said, like the addition of Calvin Ridley to this team may take away a little bit from Christian Kirk's volume itself, but I think, like you said, him working out of that slot role, them just being more efficient, hopefully them also getting his yards per route run up a little bit as well. I
Yeah,
think things like that will help benefit Christian Kirk a lot going into next season.
absolutely.
And then I also, this is another one, may get a little pushback. I've got D Hop down here. I feel like, I feel like at this point in the draft, if you're getting D Hop this low as well, I feel like that's also a tremendous value. But I also feel like in terms of who D Hop is as a player, I feel like we haven't really seen him take a step back in terms of that. He might not be like who he was early career in terms of production, but he was still a target earner last year and still a really good fantasy option. When he was on the field, he averaged 7.1 catches for 79.7 yards per game. After he had 4.2 catches for 57.2 yards per game in 2021. So that actually increased that last year. From week 7 to week 16, while he was active, he was the wide receiver 7 and the wide receiver, and overall scoring the wide receiver 4 in expected points. So in terms of his actual production, what he's able to do out in the field, he hasn't taken a step back from that at all. The issue is the situation that he's in. Obviously, he's in Tennessee. The offensive line isn't very good. Ryan Tannehill, fuck Ryan Tannehill. So it's tough to be super optimistic, but I feel like with a high target share that he's going to have, even though it's going to be a low passing volume team, I think a lot of that volume is going to go in DeAndre Hopkins' direction, and he's going to be able to make something happen with that.
Yeah, I could certainly see it. We talked about him specifically in a video that I guess hasn't released yet. That's going to be coming out for the league winners. We talked about DeAndre Hopkins signing in Tennessee and what that means fantasy-wise for all involved. So when that comes out, make sure to check that out. But I think, being that back-end wide receiver too is well within his range of outcomes. I didn't have him ranked in my top 24, but I think really what this is telling me is that you probably want to try to accumulate as many of these guys in the top 3 tiers as you can, because the range of outcomes past that point is very large. Like you're talking about anywhere from a mid wide receiver 2 to the amount of names that we're probably going to talk about here, like could be like a middling wide receiver 3. And they're pretty interchangeable.
Oh, absolutely. Once we got to this back half of this 24, it definitely gets to the point where I could make an argument for just about anybody left down here in place of,
Right.
a DK Metcalf or in place of a DeAndre Hopkins. I could make an argument for, like you said earlier, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and how he could step in and be the best receiver on that team immediately.
potentially.
Or I could make that argument for a Debo Samuel just to say that, he's not dead in the water. He could still be the wide receiver 24. Who knows? But it's, like you said, it gets scary at this back half for sure, because it could be anybody. Anybody could do anything at this range.
Yeah, so from more of like a general strategy and like draft perspective, as we're getting into these redraft draft seasons, like I mentioned, it's probably important to grab at least one, if not 2 guys from these top 3 tiers, and then you probably want to wait until the end of this last tier that we're talking about here to grab somebody, because again, if they're all this close for us, why not take the cheapest one? I think that's kind of what we've been preaching so far throughout the offseason, especially in our mock draft videos. Get the top end talent and then wait until the end of these guys that are all really lumped together. For me, since we're kind of talking about the other names that are in there, I have Mark Brown and Christian Watson in here. What are your thoughts on those guys?
I'm okay with them being in this tier as well because, like you said, we saw flashes of what Christian Watson could be last year in terms of just super efficient, but also just a super talented player out there on the field. The biggest uncertainty is Jordan Love in that situation,
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's what I'm most worried about. Christian Watson is an interesting case for me because I don't really have that much belief in Jordan Love. And also, I'm not 100% sold that Christian Watson is like really that good, or if he just shined in a fantastic situation last year with crazy, unrepeatable efficiency and touchdown luck. Like, that's very possible that we just don't see anywhere near that again this year, or that's who he is. And he's an athletic freak, which we know from his combine performance, and he's a fairly technical route runner, which we saw at the Senior Bowl last year. Like, this could be the truth. He could be for real. And if that's the case, I think he finishes even higher than this. It's really where I'm kind of ranking him in the middle of what I think he could do. He could be a lot higher, could be a lot lower. I don't know that he actually finishes here.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I like the pick. But
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's risky. And once you get to this point, we're just kind of speculating on how we think these guys are going to do. Like, even like
Yeah.
you said, you have Marquise Brown next. And I like that pick because he is the wide receiver one out there in Arizona. But he's
Yeah.
going to have to play half of a season without Kyler Murray. And who knows?
Potentially.
Potentially.
We'll see.
He
We'll
could.
see.
His timeline could be a little bit quicker. But it's tough. It's tough to really guess what his range of outcomes is going to be because there's so many variables, so many uncertainties. But in terms of talent, like you said, I love Marquise Brown up here. I feel like he can do it. It's just, is the team and the situation going to really fit what needs to be, done out there?
Yeah, when he was on the field, and this was before D Hop came back healthy, so we get a look into what it looks like when he is the wide receiver one. Through the first 6 weeks of the season, I think he was the wide receiver 7 in points per game.
Yeah, and like
He was balling.
exploding. Yeah, he was doing really well.
Yeah, and commanding high volume, which isn't as the wide receiver one, we thought he would get a lot of volume, but we expected him to be a deep target, be efficient, a lot of touchdowns. We saw him excel kind of as a possession receiver last year too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we just got to see him in some different roles, but he was able to do really well, especially when Kyler Murray was out there on the field too. So when Kyler Murray gets back, we should see an uptick in performance from Marquise Brown, hopefully. But
For sure.
again, this is all conjecture at this point.
Yeah. Do you have anybody left to round out our tier list?
To be honest with you, I feel like some of the rookies could get some nods down here, like maybe even like a Jordan Addison, like you said, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston. But again, these are people that we're kind of speculating that we hope are going to do well. But I feel like everybody else that's down here, they probably should not be in this tier with these guys. There's an argument for Drake London as well to be in this tier. But
I'm just so I don't believe in Desmond Ridder.
yeah,
And their offensive line is so good, especially at run blocking, and they just drafted Bijan. Arthur Smith is salivating to run the ball 60% of the time.
Did you see the Steve Smith clip from this morning?
Mm-mm.
I had to send it to you, but it was a clip of, you could only see the ball coming down, like the ball was already in the air, coming down, and one of the DBs, Hawkins, picked it off. They're like, oh, ball Hawkins. But Steve Smith was like, nah, this is the NFL. Show us who threw that pass. Because there was no wide receiver around. He caught the ball, and then Drake London ran past a second and a half later. So it was nah, show us who threw that pass. Because I know who it was.
Yeah. Yep.
But
We're gonna see. We're gonna see what the Falcons are like this year. But yeah, so I think that probably rounds it out for us. You agree?
Yeah.
If we come to the end?
I
Okay.
absolutely agree.
All right, so that did end up taking a while, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Let us know, like I said, leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think, if you have any disagreements, where you agree, if you want to switch up these tiers, any of the stuff like that. Or, like I mentioned at the top, individual rankings you have questions about, leave a comment, hit us up in the Discord that's linked in the description, all that good stuff. That would be great. And then... yeah, the YouTube stuff, if you could leave a like on the video, that helps us out a ton. If you want to hit the subscribe button so that you're ready for our videos coming out down in the future. We got training camp updates. We got more mock drafts. We got more of these tier lists. This is just wide receivers. We're doing all the positions. So check us out in the future. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when everything comes out. Yeah, Will, you want to talk about our sponsorships?
Yeah, make sure you guys check out those links down in the description below. Find our sponsors like Do Numbers, find you some merch, some cool stuff like that. You can check out Underdog Fantasy, use our promo code FFLW for 100% deposit match if you're a first-time user. And also, if you check out our Dynasty owner, Dynasty
sir.
owner, you can use our promo code, and that will get you a discount on a membership with that as well. But that is, again, down below in the description below. And as always, if you guys made it this far into the video, we love you. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.